Explain like I'm 5. How did the moon end up with an orbit the perfect distance to cause total eclipses? It's a complete coincidence that the moon is the right size and distance to appear almost exactly the same size as the sun from our vantage point. The iconic total eclipse with the slight ring of light around its edge is unique among the terrestrial planets in our solar system. If we ever were to become part of a larger interstellar community, the Earth's solar eclipse might be a tourist destination for aliens who would not have a chance to see something quite like it elsewhere. Follow-up question. How would our understanding of science be different if this coincidence hadn't happened? For example, gravitational lensing was observed during an eclipse. Tintin escaped the Incas by predicting an eclipse. What else would be different? The moon's orbit isn't perfectly circular. Sometimes it's too far away to cause a total eclipse, which is what happened for the most recent eclipse. Now, because of tidal forces, some of the rotational energy of the Earth is getting transferred to the moon, slowly pushing it to a higher orbit. So eventually it won't have total eclipses anymore. It's a coincidence. But the moon used to be larger in the sky, and is continuing to get smaller. We just happen to live at a time when they are very roughly similar in size from our perspective. It isn't permanently at that distance, it is slowly moving away from the Earth. It is just a fluke that causes the eclipse. The woo-woo answer: the moon is an ancient alien escape ship from when Mars and the planet that is now the asteroid belt were at war. The bigger planet belt blew up. They were at war. The moon could just make it to Earth in the blast then. When we were going to be hit by a massive solar flare, they put it in an orbit to shield the Earth from the solar flare. This finished off any maneuverability it had left. The eclipse is what protected Earth that go round. The moon used to occlude the sun even more in the past due to its closer orbit around Earth. And as the orbit grows, the moon will become incapable of occluding the sun completely during a total eclipse unless the sun grows dramatically faster to compensate. Smaller objects fall into Earth and larger objects drifted away, leaving the only option: reality as we know it. It hasn't always. It gets further out every year. It won't totally eclipse in X of years. We happen to be here at the right time. It's a complete coincidence. The moon's original orbit was much closer to the Earth, and it has been moving ever so slowly further away ever since. Eventually, the moon will be too far away for total eclipses to happen at all. So, it's not so much that the moon's orbit just happened to work for eclipses, but rather that we happen to be alive at the right part of the moon's life to be here to see them. Although earlier in time, they all would have been total. Not only that, but the same side is always facing away from us. It's almost as if it is a little puzzle for a nascent species to take notice of and then endeavor to see what's going on back there. Pure luck. Fun fact: if you go back in time or forward in time, say 1 billion years, the moon wouldn't be the same apparent size as the sun, as it is drifting away. So in the past, the moon was bigger than the sun. In the future it'll look smaller. This is because the moon tugs on the Earth unevenly. Because its orbit is slower than the Earth's rotation, it steals energy from the Earth's rotation, causing the day to lengthen and the moon's orbit to rise. It's pure coincidence and chance. Some religious fruitcakes cite this as evidence of God's intelligent design of the universe. And when we have a lunar eclipse, the shadow cast by the Earth onto the moon is pretty much exactly the diameter of the moon. Nothing to see here. Move along. Coincidence probably, but maybe God? The reason the sun and moon appear the same size in our sky is because the sun is 400 times larger than the moon, but it is 400 times farther away. It didn't always. And it won't always. Its orbit is slowly, very slowly from our point of view, lengthening. It isn't. Not always. Because the moon's orbit is elliptical. The moon isn't always the same distance from Earth. This why we get things like annular solar eclipses, where the moon is right in front of the sun, but only covering it partly, creating a ring of sunlight around the moon. Very cool. You know how on the Mara go-round you feel a pull outwards even when you start in the middle? Yeah, that's the moon. It was closer before you were born, and after you die it will be further.